Hi folks, and welcome to another edition of Zog Science. Today we're going to be talking about the digestive system and how the digestive system works. So the four distinct processes that are involved in digestion, and the reason why we're talking about this topic right now is that the digestive system is how organisms obtain energy, and they obtain energy by eating food. And the four steps that we're going to talk about are ingestion, digestion, absorption, and elimination. So ingestion is the act of feeding or eating, and there's a lot of different strategies for how organisms accomplish this. You have predators, things that are eating other stuff. You have herbivores, which are going to be eating plants, and then you've got omnivores, which can kind of eat both. So got a cool clip of a shark eating a seal, right? So again, lots of different strategies for this process. Digestion is the process of breaking food down into the molecules that are small enough to absorb. There's two different types of digestion. Mechanical digestion, which is where you actually are physically breaking down the food into smaller pieces. This is going to include chewing, although that's not the only way that mechanical digestion takes place. And it increases the surface area of the food so that way chemical digestion can occur more efficiently. And chemical digestion is where we actually take the food and we split it into small molecules. So that's taking those polymers, right, and breaking them down into the monomers. And in chemical digestion, there's a lot of enzymes that are involved, and they usually are doing some sort of hydrolysis reaction where they're splitting the bonds with the addition of water, which is part of the reason why it's important that you have water in your diets. Absorption is the uptake of nutrients by body cells. So that's the actual taking of those smaller pieces and absorbing and bringing them in. And then elimination is getting rid of undigested waste material. So most animals process food in specialized compartments, and these compartments reduce the risk of an animal digesting its own cells and tissues. You don't really want the enzymes that are breaking down food breaking down your own cells, so having that separate is important. There's two different types of digestion. We've got both intracellular and extracellular. In intracellular digestion, food particles are basically engulfed by phagocytosis. This is mostly done by single-celled organisms. So they basically grab onto that food and they bring it in so that way they can then fuse that food with enzymes that they carry in special sacs called lysosomes. Extracellular digestion is where the food is broken down outside of the cells. This is what we do. We break down the food within our stomachs, and then we absorb the food in our small intestines. And these occurs in compartments that are continuous with the outside. So basically, goes all the way from one end to the other. Animals with simple body plans have what is known as a gastrovascular cavity that functions in both the digestion and the distribution of the nutrients or the absorption of the nutrients. This is an example of a gastrovascular cavity. This is a hydra. It's a simple animal. This is the cavity right here. Digestion is going to occur here, so they have digestive enzymes that are released. They break down the food, and then it is absorbed into those cells, and then from there it is transported throughout the body. So it all is occurring in one place. That's why it's called the gastrovascular cavity. More complex animals have a complete digestive tract or an alimentary canal with a mouth and an anus. So it's a one-way system. We have an alimentary canal, and the alimentary canals can have specialized regions that carry out digestion and absorption in a stepwise fashion. So, for example, earthworms, right, they have a series of steps that goes from one end to the other with various specialized regions that do things. Same thing for grasshoppers and birds. What we're going to talk about now is the special organs or the specific organs that are involved in the food processing process for mammals. So the mammalian digestive system consists of both the alimentary canal, so that tube that kind of has all the special things, as well as some accessory glands that secrete digestive juices into those specific organs. The mammalian accessory glands are the salivary glands, the pancreas, the liver, and the gallbladder. So here's kind of an overview of the digestive system. You got your mouth area with your tongue. That's also where the salivary glands are. and that's they secrete an enzyme into your mouth that allows you to break down things. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Then we've got the pharynx, which is kind of your throat area. It goes down into your esophagus. Esophagus then goes into the stomach. Stomach then goes into the small intestines. The small intestines then go into the large intestines, and then things are eliminated through the rectum and the anus. The first stage of digestion is mechanical and is going to take place in your mouth, right? You're going to chew things. There's also a beginning of chemical digestion. The salivary glands are going to deliver saliva into your mouth, right? And saliva contains amylase, which initiates the breakdown of glucose polymers, so things like starch. And that process is going to start the process, which is why if you chew more, you actually unlock more of the nutrients in your food, because not only are you mechanically digesting it further, you are also chemically digesting it more. The tongue then shapes the food into a bolus when you swallow, and it pushes it into your pharynx or throat area, which is a junction between your esophagus and your trachea. The esophagus is what connects the stomach. The trachea goes to the lungs. So you have a structure there called the glottis and the epiglottis, and they help to control making sure that you don't have the food go down your trachea. So if you've ever choked while you're eating, right, because you were talking or laughing or something, that's because your trachea was open due to you breathing while you were swallowing, and so then the food went down the wrong pipe. So you want to make sure that food goes down the esophagus by not chewing and breathing at the same time, essentially. Food is pushed along by peristalsis, which is rhythmic contractions of smooth muscles in the walls of throughout the alimentary canal, throughout the digestive system. It specifically is used a lot in the esophagus to push food down your esophagus and into your stomach. Then you have sphincters, which are just basically doorways between all of the various compartments, all the different organs, and so they help to regulate things. For example, you don't want food coming back up out of your stomach into your throats, right? That is what causes heartburn, or when you throw up, right, that sphincter is going to open up. So they help to control where the food is going. Inside the stomach releases enzymes to continue to break down food. One of the enzymes that it releases is called pepsinogen. Pepsinogen is an inactive form of pepsin. Pepsinogen reacts with hydrochloric acid, which is also produced in the stomach. Hydrochloric acid reduces the pH, and it converts pepsinogen into pepsin, which is the active enzyme. And pepsin, as we've learned, is an enzyme that breaks down proteins. So without that hydrochloric acid, it wouldn't actually be able to function properly. The hydrochloric acid means that your stomach has a pH of about 2, which both kills bacteria and it denatures proteins, making them easier to digest. And pepsin is a protease or a protein digesting enzyme, which I mentioned. It takes proteins and cleaves them or breaks them down into smaller peptides, which is then going to allow the small intestines to break them down further. Your stomach is also participating in mechanical digestion. There are coordinated contractions that are actually kind of churning the stomach's contents. And then the food stays in your stomach for about 2 to 6 hours, depending on what it is, and it digests and breaks it down, and then it moves it on into the small intestines. There's mucus that helps to protect your stomach lining, and because your stomach is a pretty harsh environment, very low pH, you've got those enzymes that are working on breaking things down. A new epithelial layer is created every 3 days. So you get a new lining of your stomach every 3 days in order to make sure that you're replacing cells that are being damaged. So now the food has moved into the small intestines, which is the longest section of the alimentary canal. It is the major organ of digestion and absorption, and the first part is called the duodenum. Here, the food that's coming from the stomach, which is called chyme, mixes with digestive juices from the pancreas, liver, gallbladder, and the intestinal wall. Now, an important thing to note here is that this pH that is coming out of your stomach is a pH of 2, right? Well, the enzymes that function in the small intestine function much better at a basic pH. So one of the things that happens here in the duodenum is that you have a neutralization reaction occurring where those juices coming from the pancreas are going to raise the pH significantly so that it's a basic pH. That way the enzymes in the small intestines will function properly. So the solution that is produced by the pancreas is alkaline, and it neutralizes that acidic chyme. And again, there's lots of enzymes that are produced in the pancreas that are released into the duodenum. And then in the small intestines, the bile aids in digestion and absorption of fats. Bile is produced by the liver, and then it's stored in the gallbladder, and then it's released into the small intestines, and it helps to break down fats. So here's kind of a picture that shows you how all of the various macromolecules are broken down and where they're broken down. So you have carbohydrates that begin to be digested in your mouth, and then they continue to be digested in the small intestines, and then they are absorbed. Proteins begin breaking down in the stomach, and then again continue in the small intestines, and then your fats and nucleic acids are also being broken down in the small intestines. So you can see how most of the action is really taking place in the small intestines. Once those large molecules are broken down into smaller monomers, they are absorbed, and they are absorbed in the second part of the small intestines, and that is because the small intestines in the second portion have large surface areas, and the large surface areas are created by villi and microvilli. These are kind of little fingers that project into the intestine, and so because there is a very large surface area, they're going to absorb a lot of those nutrients. And the other thing is that there's a lot of blood vessels that are running right along there, and so those absorbed nutrients go directly into the blood vessels, and then they're transported around the body. And transport is both passive and active, depending on what it is. So things that are in a very high concentration in your small intestine are absorbed passively. Things that are a little bit lower concentration, but you still need, you have to use active transport in order to bring those in. So here's kind of an example of what the microvilli look like. So you have kind of these folds in the small intestines, and then on those folds you have villi, which again are the little finger-like projections, and those increase surface area because you not only have now the surface, but you also have all these channels in here where absorption can take place. Again, you've got the capillaries that are extending into the villi, so that way absorbed nutrients can be sent directly into the bloodstream. And then finally, on the ends of all of these villi, you have these little tiny microvilli. So you want to think about fingers on little tiny fingers on top of these fingers, and so that allows continued absorption of the nutrients. Finally, for elimination, which is our final process, the food is going to move through the small intestines, is going to go into the large intestines. In the large intestines, water and salts and also vitamins are going to be absorbed back into the bloodstream, so that way you're not losing a lot of water. And then it's going to continue into the rectum, where it will be stored until it is finally eliminated through the anus. And that's all we've got for you today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.